All right, so we're exposing two endpoints, two RESTful endpoints, the find all users and create user. Certainly we'll need more, and we'll implement them as we need them. But at least with create user, at least we can do something like create a registration page, right? We register, we pass in some username and password, and we can hit presumably a server, this particular endpoint from Angular. All right, let's take a look at that. So we split up these into two different projects. This is the Node.js middle tier project that is listening for those incoming RESTful queries, and we have another Angular project, right? This is which is we're going to implement the client side. Yes. So on the client side, I've gone ahead and created already a couple of login boilerplate components. Right. I've created a login component, and the login component only has just a couple of input fields, has a button, and it's not doing much really. The registration also is just a couple of 3 input fields, a button, and so on and so forth. And then I have a profile page as well, right? So some placeholders, but they're not really doing anything. Okay. So let's take a look at what we have so far. Let's see. There's Mongo. I'm not going to touch that. Let's go into that particular project, and let's go into where is it actually? Is it in 2018? Angular. There we go. So that's webdev summer 1 Angular, and in here we can do an npm start. And it's serving up, so we could just navigate there. So this will be localhost 4200. Maybe. Oh, it's compiled. Okay. And there was the course grid. Remember that this was going out to a server. Oh, okay. We don't have that server up and running, right? That server is a Java server that it's hosting all that data that we were working on last week. So let's start that up. I think it's the default one here. No, that's not it. I'm guessing it's this one, no? So while that starts up, meanwhile, I've added these two links that allows it to navigate to a login page, or the beginning of a login page, or register. Again, the beginning of a register page. From login, right now, it's you can navigate to either to a register page to sign up, or back to the home page, or the register page. You can navigate to a login page, or back and forth between the two. Okay. And right now, if you log in, the only thing that it does is just navigates to a profile. It's not really doing anything, right? It's just navigating. Just to show you what the navigation would look like, right? Again, if I log out, I go back to the, oh, okay, so it's up and running. We go to register. If I register again, if I put in some values, I click on register, it navigates me to the profile page. Make sense? All right, so that's the idea, right? Either log in or register. It logs me in, and then dumps me on my profile page. Make sense? All right. All right. So let's implement it. Let's take a look at first on the navigation side. How all this navigation is happening. Okay. So to do that, let's take a look at the declaration of that navigation. We covered this a little bit last week, and let's go over a little bit. All right. So in a routing file, if you remember, right, we had declared what the routes looked like, right? We have the default one. If it's empty, right? If the path is empty, I want by default to go to the route home, the home route, right? If I explicitly type home, then it takes me to the home route. So these two map to the same component, the whiteboard component. Yes. Here are the 3 new ones: login, register, and profile on lines 10 through 12. And if the URL says /login, it takes me to the login component. If register profile takes me to the register and the profile component. Make sense? Last week we played around with courses and course IDs and module IDs and whatnot, right? That was fairly much more involved. Yes. So these 3 new ones, login, register, and profile, those are fairly simple. Okay. So if you take a look at the login component, it's not really doing anything, right? It's just declaring the HTML, the CSS, one event handler, the login function, right? If I click on the login function, this is what would run, right? But let's not look at this just yet. Let's look at the HTML. The HTML right now, it's 2 input fields and a button, right? And at the bottom, this is what I want to show you first, is at the bottom we have these router links. See that? The router links is that, notice that it's referencing to a /home. That would take me to the whiteboard home page, yes? Right, according to the configuration in the routing. And the /register just navigates me blindly to the register page. See that? So those are really simple. Everybody okay with that? Right, same thing in the registration page. Right, very similar in the registration. Where are we? Register, HTML. We also have at the bottom, we have links to the login page and the home page. Right? And in the profile at the bottom, in the profile, also at the bottom, we can either go home, or if we click on logout, actually no, this should go to login. There is no logout. Login. Just kicks you back into the login page if you log out. Make sense? Now, right now, also in the login. So let's look at the login. All right. So let's implement the login fully. So we have here the login. So we have obviously we have navigations to our other components, right? And those go blindly. Just go there. Don't bother. There's no validation, right? You just blindly navigate to those pages. But if I'm clicking on the login button, I'm not going to blindly go to the profile page. I want to be able to see if that user actually exists, right? So here I bound the login function to a click event. Yes. I'm also passing along the username and password, which are models that have been bound to the input fields, right? The username and password. So this is all stuff that we played around with last week, right? And those username and password have been declared in the component as just variables in the component, right? Everybody okay? Everybody still with me? Right, so this is just a simple component bound with the username and password. Nothing interesting. The only new thing that so all this we looked at last week, just getting just form data here, right? And we're passing it here to an event handler. The only new thing here that we're learning today here is that we want to be able to navigate to another component, but programmatically. For instance, when you click a button, what we'd like to be able to do is check with the server, hey server, does this username and password exist? If so, right, I would like to programmatically navigate to that other component. See that? And that's done through a router, right? You can say this.router.navigate, and then whatever URL you want to map to, right? So this would be profile, which is mapped to the profile component, right? In the profile component display. See that? Right? To get a hold of the router, right? We inject it into the constructor, and once we have the router, we can then use it, for instance, here in the login. All right, everybody okay? All right. All right. So now how is it that we get a hold of checking to see if this username and password are any good? Right, that's the important part. How do we go? How do we access? We want to hit that. We want to go to the server and say, hey, does this user exist? And same thing with the registration. So in the registration, it's very similar. In the registration, we have the same username, the same password, but we have an additional password too, to validate whether the two passwords are the same. Right? If they're not the same, we like to say, no, sorry, the passwords have to match. Right? And when we click on and we have a register button that if we click on it, it's going to be handled by the register function over here. Yes, and it's going to pass along. We're going to pass along username, password, and password too. Right? And in the register function, right now it's just a function that just takes in those three arguments. Right now it's just echoing it to the console But here's where the new thing, right? So if we say this.router.navigate, we can actually navigate to the profile page if it's successfully generated, is inserted into a database. Yes, right. When the server comes back saying, "Yep, you're registered. Okay, you're registered. Go ahead. You can go in." Make sense? Everybody okay? All right. So we do have a create on the server. That's what we're going to hit from here. We're going to say, "Hey server, create this brand new user with username and password," after having validated. All right. So to do that, we want to hit that service on the server. To do that, we need a service on the client. We need a service on the client. How do we do that? Let's see. We had already created a couple of these services, right? The course, the lesson, the module. Let's create a user service, right? That we can talk to and hit that URL over there. All right. So let's do that. Let's create a new TypeScript, and this will be a user.service, but this will be on the client, right? This is the sister of the other. It's a mirror image of what lives on the server. But here we're generating the HTTP request. Over there we're waiting for the HTTP request. Right, this is going to send the request. That one's going to send back a response. All right, so here we're going to export a class. And this is going to be the user service client. And we want to create a function called createUser. And this will take as argument username and password. And we want to create a user object. So we'll say let user be a user object. So username, and password. And typically this would be a constant since we're not going to change this. So constant. All right. So we have a user object, a JSON user object. We want to send it. We're going to send it as a post over to the server, and we know how to do that, right? We know how to do that. We're going to use just fetch. Okay, so we're going to do fetch. Where are we going? We're going. The URL is what is it? HTTP://localhost 4000. Is it 4000? Right. We're going to send in the body. As the body, we're going to send what? We're going to JSON dot. I think we have to stringify it, right? Stringify the user. That converts it into a string, so we can stream it across the HTTP request. What else do we need? We'll probably also need the method to not be get, instead be post. So we'll do a post. What else do we need? Probably we'll need the content type. We'll need to say that this is application JSON. So this will be probably in the headers, and this will be in the content type, and it'll be what is JSON? Is it application/JSON? I think, right? Anything else do we need here? I think that's it. And let's see. So and this is a promise. So I'm just going to return this promise. I'm going to return the promise, and we'd like to be able to invoke this from the client. We'll need to declare this as a data provider, right? So let's go to modules. Where is it? In the modules, we'll need to declare as a provider. There it is. Okay. So that now in the registration, in the register. Where's register? Where did I put it? Register. Register component. Right. We can ask for that component for that data provider. So this is service of type user service client. There it is. Right. And so we can now, instead of blindly navigating to the profile, right, what we'd like to be able to do is first do a this.service.createUser, and I'm going to pass in the username and the password. Okay, this is going to return a promise, which we're going to wait for, right? And when it comes back, I don't really care what comes back. What we're going to do is that we're just going to navigate. Now we navigate. Right, we navigate after the response comes back. Okay? Right? Yes?
I think it's like the create user function. We have mentioned HTTP 4000 and not API/.
Ooh, thank you. Let's go there. Let's revise this. If we go to register, create user. Oh, yes, of course. This should be the actual endpoint, right? API/user. Just checking if you're awake. There it is. So that's our user object that we're posting to. All right, so let's try it out. See if this breaks. On the server side, we can put a breakpoint to see if we indeed are hitting that endpoint. Let's go to the register. So let's log out. Let's go to register, and we can look at we can inspect here and see the network traffic. We can look at the network and clear. Let's try it out. So we have Alice, Bob, Charlie, Dan. Let's try Dan. So Dan, and Dan. And we can do also a source. We can look at the register. Where are you? Source. We can also step through on the client side. We can go to register, and there's our component. There's our components. I can put a breakpoint right there. So Dan, and Dan. So we're stepping through on the client side, and we have Dan and Dan. Very good. And we can step through, and we can go into the service create. There it is. There's our user object, and we're about to send that over to the server. So if we say go ahead, go, it complains something went wrong. So we didn't get to the server. Let's see what the console says. Course. Oh, right. We have on the server side, we have two different URLs, right? One is running on 4,000, and one is running at 4,200, right? And that's considered to go across domain, right? So let's configure cross-domain scripting, right? Just like we did on Java, we had to add the add course mapping, right? So same thing here. So let's do that next.